Welcome back to the Spoonie and Caregiver Life podcast with me, your host, Jordan Banderas. And before we get started, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any episodes of the podcast. And let's go ahead and get into today's episode, shall we? So, on today's episode, I want to answer a question that was sent to me by one of our listeners. And the question was, why should I believe in myself? Well, I'm going to give you the answer as to why should you believe in yourself or why you should believe in yourself in this situation. So let's get to it, right? Now, obviously we're spoonies, we're caregivers, everybody's going through something. And when you're facing an illness or you're going through something in life, it is hard to dig deep and find self-belief, especially, and you're going to agree with me, when doctors and other people aren't able to understand what you're going through. And unfortunately, it happens a lot with spoonies and people that are going through invisible illnesses or even just stress sometimes. Like, people will tell you, like, why are you so stressed? But they don't know exactly how you feel. And it is tough when you have a chronic illness and nobody knows what to do, especially when it's something like severe depression, anxiety, lupus, fibromyalgia, and chronic pain. So that's even worse because you're going through all of this and then you get the stigma and everything that comes with it. So what are you supposed to do, sometimes and also when you have any other major health issues that you're dealing with, like sometimes it could be even cancer, or just people don't understand because sometimes they're just too focused on what's going on their lives. But what typically happens when you have a diagnosis of this magnitude is that you question your abilities because nobody believes you, nobody tells you how you can get better, so you're like, is this real? So you start questioning your diagnosis. If you're making it up, and you give up on so much in life, and sometimes end up not believing in yourself, like I mentioned. In this type of situations, we might be told by doctors, close friends, and even family members that there is nothing wrong with us because they have never faced a situation like yours. Or, and this also happens, they are uneducated about your illness that you're dealing with. And that's another problem because if they don't want to learn about it, how are they supposed to understand you? So it only becomes natural to start doubting ourselves based upon what others' opinions are. We begin believing others instead of ourselves, Sometimes when people tell you like, oh, you don't seem sick, you're like, well, you're right, but I feel sick. So it happens. Sometimes we even believe the snake oil salesman has every cure for your disease because that's how bad you want to get back to a normal life. I have tried different things for me, at least. I have tried the snake oil and it didn't work for me. So if you have tried something like that and it works for you, let us know, because obviously if it helps you, it might help somebody else. But obviously be careful on what you try. You never know what you're trying sometimes. And when the pandemic began, one of the things that I decided to try after hearing about how bad the mental health crisis had become and the judgment that are being placed on others with sicknesses is I began a massive overhaul of my life. And I have heard people say that there is a power in self-belief, but I always thought it had to do with religion. A lot of people actually feel the same way, but let me tell you, it's not just about religion, because I'm not religious, but after much thought, I realized that there is a massive power beyond our wildest imagination when you hand over your power and begin to believe in yourself. I had visited the topic before about how I used to not believe in myself and always expected someone else to do it for me. As many of you know, I was thrown a curveball in January of 2017 and had to start the belief process as my wife became so ill that she was unable to care for herself completely. But what I haven't shared is the fact that for me to find that self belief, I had to literally start talking to myself and also listening to myself. And I don't mean talking to myself in a demeaning way like many of us do or used to do, because let's be honest, we do that a lot. That's one of the biggest problems that I have seen with me, with my wife, and with others. But in a way, but the way that I was talking to myself, it's a way that showed compassion to myself when I was down and out and ready to give up. By doing this, or I mean, doing this was not an easy feat. It was the hardest thing to do because it's constant work every day, and you can see progress every day. Because when you have never been able to speak to yourself that way, it is like retraining your brain, literally. It's like learning something new. It's learning how to do something. It's worse than learning how to drive again, because you're so like into the emotion of like talking negative to you that it just comes out. But you have to become very self-aware, pretty much, almost like driving a brand new car. That's pretty much how I felt. And one of the things that makes it a little bit harder, and that's why a lot of people don't want to do it, is because the data and scientists and doctors say that it takes 21 days to create a new habit. I am here to attest that it takes much more work and time than that. For example, when I used to quit things, I will ask myself, why am I quitting? And the first thing that will pop into my head will be, because you're a loser, or that will never be good enough for anyone. And that is so true. But when I changed my internal dialogue to a more understanding one, I was able to ask myself the question that I needed to help propel myself forward and not look back. At first, the answer was no. I mean, like I said, we have to retrain ourselves. But just because the answer was no, I didn't stop there. I had to figure out why I didn't believe in myself. And one day, I finally figured out the answer. It was profound, believe me. I realized that I was relying on others' opinions that made me believe that I was less than. I have shared stories about that previously, so what I had to do was to figure out if these opinions were true. And for me, the opinions didn't add up to the way that I was living my life. It wasn't every time someone made me feel like I wasn't good enough, I realized that people were projecting their insecurities onto me, which probably is something that could be happening to you, but we don't realize that because they didn't see they didn't see the effort that I was putting in or how I was preparing myself to finally believe that I could be successful and believe in myself. I was ready to grab life by the horns. And that's pretty much one thing that you're going to have to do. Grab life by the horns. It is hard. You're going to get hurt. You're going to get scratched. You're going to literally have to fight sometimes. But because I listened to them, I thought they were right. Until I had to step up to the plate and get rid of those old beliefs that I had about myself. That's how I was able to go to therapy and figure out what had caused my PTSD. That's how I learned more about my wife's conditions so I could help her through the hard times. That's another good thing. And also do other things like getting in better shape, getting stronger physically and mentally, and do more research about what new treatments are out there. and available to help my poor wife that had crashed both emotionally and physically. We have been fortunate to have found some treatments and doctors that have helped tremendously. And that's because we believe. Like I knew that the treatments were out there. I knew we could get to them, and somehow we made it happen. And that's why I want you to understand. You can make it happen too, but it's gonna be hard. You can. But one of the things that I see that my wife has, or one of the things that I see on my wife that has helped her the most, is the fact that she started to believe in herself. And this makes me very happy because the other day she said to me that she was not going to give up, that she still has fight left in her. Even after all she has been through. And that is a whole lot to swallow because she still has that fight. And I see it now. She is getting to a point where she's starting to fight back. Not just to doctors, but like to everybody. Even me, which I'm like, I feel proud because I'm like, oh my gosh, she's finally able to fight back. Like, obviously, she's not mean to me, but I'm just like, oh my gosh. And if she gets mean, I tell her, like, hey, tone it down. Kind of like what she used to say to me. So that makes me feel proud. And she understands that she might not be able to get 100% better, but she's actually okay with baby steps, which is how I started. She saw me. If you're going through something similar, please understand that if you don't believe that you can get better, then most likely you won't have the mindset to believe that you can get better or change your situation. Even making a few small changes can help. And here's one thing that helps with self-belief. A Harvard study found that the placebo effect happens to be effective as much as 50%, just like the pill. The pill has like obviously another 50% effective rate. So the placebo effect is pretty much like I'm giving you this pill and you don't know what it is. You don't know if it's a sugar pill or if it's the actual medicine. But all of a sudden, there's people that actually start to feel better. Why? Because they believe that they actually are taking the medicine and they start to pretty much heal themselves. That's one of the things about the mind. The mind is very powerful. That's what they mean when they say that. And I don't want to go all woo-wooey, but the same thing happens with self-belief because that's how I see it from my perspective. Like when I started believing in myself that I could do things, I was able to achieve them. I've been able to achieve a lot. So it's like, it's the power of self-belief. It's like the placebo effect, So don't wait for the sugar pill. Just take that imaginary pill and start believing in yourself and make the changes that you need to make. That's pretty much what I'm saying. Because a 50% effective rate is literally almost as great of a result as what people get from taking the pill, literally. So think about it. One small change can change your mindset 50%. That's pretty much what happens. So when you start your journey to self-belief and discovery, there might be other small things that you may want to add in, or in small doses, obviously, and your whole life could literally change. And that's one of the things is like you have to do it small. This is how I did. This is just a quick example. When I started working out, I was like, I'm not gonna stop doing 25-pound dumbbells until I feel ready to move up. And it took me like 6 weeks. I did it for 6 weeks because I didn't want to hurt myself. And that's pretty much how I started believing in myself. It's like, I can do this and I'm going to achieve it. And then I started moving up on the weight. And the same thing happens with running. I started with 5 minutes, not even 5 minutes. I started with probably like 2 minutes running. And then I was getting so tired. And then I went for 3, 4. So the same thing I've done with the cold showers. I start with 15 seconds, which, if you ever decide to do that, 15 seconds, it's a long time, believe me. When you're in under the cold water, it feels like an hour. So now I'm almost to a minute, which is great, but it has taken time. So always take your time. You have 24 hours. Sometimes you might have to plan your day, but take your time. And that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about today on today's episode. I hope you guys are enjoying the episodes. I really, really appreciate all the feedback, the questions like this one, all the support, all the new listeners, the new supporters. I really appreciate you. And don't forget to follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And if you want to share your story, don't forget to send it to us at the Spoonie and Caregiver Live at gmail.com. You can do it anonymously there, or you can actually post it on the community, the Spoonie and Caregiver Live community on Facebook. And I'll leave you like always. Always take care of yourself and have a great day.